What is going on? How's everybody doing today? I hope everybody is having a good day, good week so far, whenever you're watching. Anyway, we have some college football playoff talk. So we're gonna briefly speed through each game, kind of point out some details of the game that I think could make a difference for certain teams and kind of give my predictions. So we're gonna run through this super fast. First game, Alabama versus Oklahoma. This is probably the best game of the week. You could argue this one and the Miami and Texas Tech one, or Texas A&M one, I'm sorry. But Alabama and Oklahoma is my game of the week. We running back again. This is part two of the year. First thing that comes to mind is I think it's going to be a low scoring game. Two good defenses, two shaky offenses, I would say, as Ty Simpson and the whole Alabama squad, they've had kind of a tough time getting going down the stretch of the season. Like we saw it against Oklahoma in the first matchup. We saw it against Georgia in the SEC championship. We saw it against even Auburn. They kind of faded down the stretch. This Oklahoma defense, they're no joke. I think a big key to this game, if you're Alabama, is you have to get the run game going. That is a necessity in this game. Their biggest weakness on the season has been their run game. They haven't been able to establish it. If you look back at the last Oklahoma game, Ty Simpson threw like almost 50 passes. I think he threw 47 passes. And a big part of that in this Kalen DeBoer offense is because you can't get a run game established, and you have to have a run game established. In the SEC championship, Alabama rushed for negative yardage. You can't do that against this Oklahoma team. Like even if it involves Ty Simpson getting it going with his legs, got to give this Oklahoma defense some kind of different looks, keep them on their toes a bit. Oklahoma's defense had Ty Simpson rattled a bit in the first game. They had pressure on the quarterback a good bit. I don't know if he will be able to sit in the pocket and make throws all around the field in this game because he had trouble doing that last game. Because, like I said, Oklahoma's defense, they're going to get to the ball. Our Mason Thomas is back this week. He wasn't there at the last game. That's a big difference maker for this Texas A&M defense. Or, I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Texas A&M. This Oklahoma defense, you know, last game, you can make a point that Alabama kind of had them beat at one time. They lost the game solely by turning the ball over. They lost the turnover battle. Oklahoma forced three turnovers, one being a pick six that Ty Simpson threw. And I think if Alabama wins the turnover battle in that game, you can make a case that they win that game pretty easily. And I think special teams is also very important here. Keys for Alabama, got to get the run game going, win the turnover battle, don't turn the ball over. And it wasn't just them making mistakes turning the ball over, it was Oklahoma going in and forcing these fumbles, forcing these picks. It was Oklahoma's defense's work. It wasn't Alabama just playing bad ball. So Oklahoma, John Mateer, you have to get him going. He's got to have a solid game. That thumb's looking better now. He's starting to get it going through the air a little bit. I still don't think he's capable of fully beating a team through the air. Got to use his legs a little bit. We saw that type of John Mateer earlier in the season where he's sitting there running through guys. We hadn't seen that since then. We haven't seen that since his injury. Maybe it has something to do with the injury. I'm not sure. This defense is good enough to keep you in the game if you just go out there and play okay. We've seen it all season. Oklahoma, if you put up 24 to 28 points, I really like your odds here. Maybe 30. It's going to be tough for them to put up 30 against this Alabama defense. Put up 24 to 28. I think you're sitting in a pretty nice spot because I think your defense can hold Alabama to under that, especially if you do get some pressure on Ty Simpson pretty early. I'm super split on my pick here. I flip-flopped about 20 times already. Brett Venables does have Kalen DeBoer's number in these games so far. It's hard to see that trend continue. I think Alabama's eventually going to pull one out, and it feels like this could be the spot. College football playoffs, moment is huge, do or die. That's just the way Alabama has played. Like every year, it seems like, even under this Kalen DeBoer team, they get up when they have to get up. But then again, with the way that Alabama has played these past few weeks, not just all season, but these past few weeks, it's tough to go against this rugged, physical Oklahoma defense. I'll take Oklahoma to win in a very low scoring game, gritty defensive game. I think it's going to be a good one no matter what, though. I'll take Oklahoma. I don't think they cover. I think it's a close game, but actually, I don't even know what the spread is, so I can't say that. Miami versus Texas A&M. This is one of my other games. I think this is the second, arguably the first best game of the entire first round. First off, how is this game only the 12 o'clock time slot? I don't know. I don't think Oregon and James Madison should have gotten the prime time slot over this game, especially being at Kyle Field. Imagine Kyle Field versus Miami at night. It would be electric. I don't know how this game got the 12 o'clock time slot. It makes no sense to me, especially being this is arguably the biggest game of the first round. So, anyways, let's get into it. Key to this game, it's quarterbacks. Got to come in, got to be consistent. We've seen a little bit of shakiness from both quarterbacks. Marcel Reed been a little shaky down the stretch. Carson Beck, he's had a little shaky at times for Miami this season. QB play in this game is detrimental for both teams, in my opinion. I think whoever has a better quarterback in this game may win the game. Miami does travel to Kyle Field, like I said, home of the Aggies, going into a hostile environment. You've done it before, but this one's different. This one's different. This is against a rugged SEC team. You know, if you're Texas A&M, you have to get the run game going, just like I was talking about in the past game. It's going to be tough to run the ball to Ruben Bain's side of the field, but you're going to have to establish the run game somehow and keep Miami on their toes. So it'll allow Marcel Reed to be able to sit back there, have those few extra seconds while they're looking at the run, have a cleaner pocket and deliver. It's going to be another detrimental thing. Got to get Marcel Reed going. That kind of factors into the quarterback play that I was saying. I'm super invested to see how Miami's offensive front takes the pass rush of Texas A&M. I think Miami having Francis Mauigoa on your offensive line is alone a massive game changer because I think he is probably arguably the best offensive lineman in the entire country. If you're Texas A&M and you could jump on Carson Beck super quick, as long as if you can get around Mauigoa and jump on Carson Beck super quick, and maybe even force an early turnover, that's usually when you start to see Carson Beck crumble a little bit. It's kind of been a domino effect after that. After his first turnover, they're they're going to keep coming. That's usually what happens. If he has an early turnover, like in the Louisville game, he threw 4 picks that game. It's a domino effect. There's something in his head. You get in his head, and you can win the game. You know, um, I think I think that if you're Texas A&M, you can control the run game as well. Or you can control a game. I'm sorry, I don't know. You can control the passing game just by getting to Carson Beck, is what I'm saying. If you're Miami, stick to the shorter game. Don't take deep shots as much through the middle of the field. Try and avoid those turnover type situations unless you really have to. Which, yeah, you're going to have to keep them on their toes and throw some down the field. Can't throw nothing but these little screen passes. Get Malachi Tony involved. I think that is one way that you do win this game. You get your best player on offense. You get your most explosive player on offense involved in some creative ways. Try and create some different plays that confuses this Texas A&M defense. Try and do that as much as possible. If you're not getting Malachi Tony involved much, that's kind of your main playmaker eliminated. It's going to be tough to make anything happen, especially if this A&M defense is getting to Carson Beck pretty quick. If they're getting to him pretty quick, I think Tony's good enough to extend some plays and make some plays. If you do have to rely on shorter passes, he's good yards after carry, and I think that's big. Got to get Malachi Tony going. Your most explosive player. I think this game kind of comes down to whoever wins the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Does Miami defense have some talent too? They definitely do. This Texas A&M defense also has some talent. You know, although we do talk about Carson Beck having his turnover issues, remember those 4 interceptions were against Louisville. Miami still almost won that game. And that's despite their quarterback throwing 4 interceptions. So Miami has some fight. We've seen it before. They've kind of been in playoff mode ever since that loss. And keys to this game, Miami got to win the turnover battle. Carson Beck, protect the football. Texas A&M. If you're Texas A&M, gotta get to the quarterback. Get to the quarterback. Make them force some turnovers. If you can force some turnovers in this game, I like your chances again. You know, both teams got to try and win the line of scrimmage. That's crucial here. It's kind of what I have for that game. Ole Miss and Tulane. So, actually, Tulane versus Ole Miss. Tulane travels to Oxford. So I can't say too much about this game because I'm not very familiar with Tulane. I'm not too familiar with Tulane and how they match up against Ole Miss. But I have watched some Tulane, and from what I do know, I'll kind of get into it. I'm mainly basing it off of that first game that Tulane and Ole Miss played earlier in the season. So I think Ole Miss just kind of completely outmatches Tulane here, and it showed early on in the season. Ole Miss beat Tulane by 35. Tulane goes back to Oxford now, but without Lane Kiffin. You go back, you run it back, and I'm very intrigued to see how this Ole Miss squad does perform without Lane Kiffin on his sidelines. I think they'll come out highly motivated with all that did go on. I think that they're going to come out and play for this new coaching staff. And I'm not saying Tulane's a bad team at all. Just the fact that group of five rosters, talent wise, don't really compare to the talent of these Power Four programs. And I think that's just a fact. I don't think many people can get too mad about that. It's just kind of how it is. And that's nothing against Tulane. I mean, I think they're the best group of five program out there. You could say James Madison as well. It's between those two. So no hate against them. And I mean, we've just seen it countless times. You get completely outmatched in these situations. Not counting them out though, because like I said, Ole Miss doesn't have Lane Kiffin. Can Tulane shock the world? If anybody could do it, I think it might be Tulane. I don't know. Ole Miss still has their entire offensive staff coming home in Oxford, and that was from LSU, by the way. Oxford, Oxford, Mississippi has waited for a moment like this forever. It's going to be rowdy in there. It's going to be electric. I think Trinidad Chambliss and company go out there and get the job done. I like them to cover the spread, the 17.5 point spread here. I just can't really break this down too much. I just think Ole Miss is going to win. That's just my prediction. So I'm not going to break this game down. Just my prediction. Ole Miss covers a 17.5 point spread, but I think Tulane's going to have some fight to them as much as they possibly can. James Madison heads to Eugene, Oregon. Talk about a tough environment. Another game. I think one side just overpowers the other. I can't really say too much about these Power Four and Group of Five matchups because, again, I don't know too much about James Madison, so this is mainly just my prediction. I think Oregon outmatches them, especially on the line of scrimmage. I think this game I don't think James Madison is going to be able to hold up on the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. Oregon's just too big, too physical, and they develop players at a higher level, I would say, because you're getting the higher level talent. So I guess you're not really developing players at a higher level, because I think James Madison develops players at an elite level, but I just don't think they match up. I don't think they quite match up with Oregon. I also don't really trust James Madison's passing game against Oregon because Oregon, statistically, if you look at it, they have one of the better secondaries in the entire country. You might not realize it, but it's kind of how it grades out. You're not going to win by just running the ball against Oregon. You're going to have to pull out the entire playbook, every trick in the book. I just don't know if James Madison quite has a passing attack to outmatch Oregon because, like I said, you can't beat him one dimensional. You have to be two dimensional in this if you're going to pull off the major upset. Now, if this James Madison defense can get to Oregon and their offense, I don't know, man. I just don't know if they can. I think that could change the game a little bit. Can you find a way to rattle Dante Moore? It's going to be tough because really the only team that we've seen do that is really no one. I mean, Indiana did. Indiana had him rattled for a little bit. He wasn't rattled in the whiteout. I think Dante Moore is good enough to come in here and prevail. I think Oregon covers the spread. Last I looked, it was 23.5. I do think James Madison will put up a little bit of points, maybe in garbage time. I do like Oregon to cover. That's just my prediction. Can't really break this down too much. James Madison does have a good run game, a very good run game. So if you can break out a few explosive runs early on and maybe let it open up the pass game a little bit, you might have something going. Maybe get your quarterback to use his legs a little bit. Just find a way to keep Oregon on their toes. maybe, just maybe, you could tweak something out. I don't really see a world here where James Madison can win. I'd love to be wrong though. James Madison fans have been awesome. I've seen it all over Twitter and everything. James Madison fans have been awesome, and they're super excited for this game. Another thing here is your head coach is headed to UCLA. How invested? I know he's invested in this game. I'm not saying Bob Jesnian is not invested in this game. He's definitely invested in this game. But he's also running a whole nother program. That's got to be tougher. That's got to be tougher, especially when your talent is lower than Oregon's per se. And that again, that's nothing against James Madison. I think James Madison is the best Group 5 program. Maybe you can give it to Tulane. I think you could flip flop those, just like I said in the Tulane video. You could flip flop the two. So that's kind of all I have for this game. I can't really break it down, but my prediction is Oregon covers the spread and goes on to face Texas Tech, I believe, is how the bracket plays out. So that'll do it for this video. I know it wasn't a super in-depth breakdown, especially on the group of 5 games, but next, the second round, we'll have more in-depth because I know more about some of those teams, so I can really go more in-depth on those. So be on the lookout for that one. I'll have another predictions video coming out, like my favorite bets for this week and stuff, just to do something a little different, something a little fun. Um, but anyways, if you somehow did enjoy this video, maybe please consider dropping a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. I've gotten a lot of support lately. I think we're almost at 100 subscribers, and I just launched this channel like less than less than 3 weeks ago. I've really been posting on it, so grateful for all the support. And yeah, stay tuned for the next ones. We'll have some more breakdowns coming up for the second round and some of the bowl games as well. So yeah, catch you guys on the next one. Peace.